I'm something like a Renaissance woman, okay? So that means I know how to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a little bit of this. And today I'm teaching y'all how to do a short acrylic set, but for a braider. First things first, you always have to prep your nail first, and that means you have to remove the natural shine off the nail. Now, my drill bit is on very low. You never want to take a drill bit or a sandband to somebody's nail on extremely high power. That's going to tear up their nail bed. Now, if a person has really long cuticles, you do want to push those back and clip those, but I decided I was going to do a completely individual video just solely for nail prep. Now, if I'm pulling this finger up, you can see how this one is shiny and then the pinky is dull. That's what I mean by take the shine off. You want to work around their entire cuticle area. You don't want to hit their skin, but you want to make sure you get really close down so you can prep the entire nail. And remember, you guys, this is on like a speed 5. This is extremely low. And you can also do this with a nail file. That's how I started. I was hand file only when I first started. I cannot stress this enough. Do not have this sandband up on the highest level. Please, very, very low. And like I said, if you're not comfortable with this, use the hand file. But same thing, when you're using the hand file, don't go super fast and make sure you're getting all around the edges of your finger and the cuticle. The prep is the main part of the entire process. I'm telling you, everything else can be fixed, but if you mess your prep up, you mess the entire setup. And please remind your client, once you have prepped, it's no more touching, it's no more eating, it's no more doing nothing, okay? Those hands need to stay on the table and not touching anything. The worst is having a client that loves to eat or loves to play in their hair or do anything or touch black lint, anything. Make sure your client keeps their damn hands on the table. I'm telling you, that is going to be your biggest stressor with your prep, because if you get even a little bit of oil back onto your prep nail, it's going to mess it up. The nail's going to pop off. It's going to lift. Something's not going to be right. So after you have your nails filed, shaped, and then all the way prepped, now we're going to go into putting the tips on. So the tips all have numbers on them. I don't know if you can see that. I'm trying to show you as good as I can. But all the tips have numbers on them. 0 being like for your thumbs, and then the lower numbers or the higher numbers are going to be for your smaller fingers. So when you put the glue on your tip, you're going to put it directly on the tip. Make sure the tip fits sidewall to sidewall. So that means side of your nail to side of your nail. You don't want it too short because the tip will crack, and you don't want it too wide because, who likes wide nails? And when you put the glue on there, you're going to put it on the tip, not the nail. You know, people do it different ways, but this is how I do it. And it's called a stop and roll. So you kind of stop the nail at the top and then you roll it to flatten it out so that the entire nail adheres to your client's nail. And also during this stop and roll technique, you also eliminate air bubbles in the nails, because once you get air bubbles and things, it makes it easy for water to get in there, and then fungus grows, and then things that you don't want. And then if a person has kind of an awkward shaped nail bed, you can still file and taper the nail tip to fit your client's nail. I like to hold my client's nail kind of down a little bit because it helps me get the nail straight, because trust me, baby, if the nail tip is crooked when it goes on the finger, there's nothing you can do about it. The tip is going to be crooked. It doesn't matter what you do. You would probably have to do the shortest to the meat for it not to be affected. So always do your best to get those nail tips on straight the first time. Take your time throughout each of these steps. I know sometimes it's the pressure to hurry up and get someone in and out or anything like that, but someone's always going to appreciate you taking your time and getting it right than rushing and having it wrong. So always remember that. Now, these nails do have a C curve in them. You can see how they curve down a little bit, but they do have nail tips that don't have a C curve. It all depends on what you like. I personally like the C curve nails a little bit better. And the thumbs can always be a little tricky no matter what you're doing. So just pay extra close attention to your thumbs, okay? Make sure everything is good and everything is going how it's supposed to go. Now we're going to go into cutting the nails down. Now remember I told you that we were doing a Braiders set, so that's why I skipped that pinky. And other than that, we're cutting these all the way down to the nub basically. Some people use scissors. I use tip cutters. It's all personal preference. However you're going to do it, just make sure you get the tips cut correctly. I use tip cutters because of the little magnets that I'm going to show you in the next clip, because it just makes everything go way faster, and then you can get everything nice and even on your first time around. You don't really have to waste time going back and rechecking to see if everything aligns up, because you already know, because you've measured and you've cut. So these little magnets are the magnets that I was talking about. You can get these on Amazon. When I'm able to link it, I definitely will. And these give you your length right off the top. You don't have to keep holding the fingers next to each other. None of that. That's all ancient. Just get you some of these magnets and put them on there. Now, the 2 magnets was a little too short for her because we're doing her pinkies pointed so that she can get those nice stitch braids going. So I have 4 or 5 magnets on here, I believe, and then that's what we came out with. A Braiders Set is all the nails short except either your pinky and or your ring finger. So we're about to shape this pinky into a stiletto, pointy almond. However, I take scissors to get the initial shape going, then I use my file to continue the shape from there. Now, the key to getting this nice and even is you want to try to keep the amount of times you stroke your file even on both sides of the nail. So once you work on one side, then go back and work on the other. Work on one side, then go back and work on the other. You want to keep it like that so that everything comes together nice and gradual, that you don't have to overwork and then guess to where the point is on one of them. And again, I know you're tired of hearing me say this, but take your time when you're doing this. People will appreciate you taking your time more than getting out the chair quickly and it's not how they wanted it to be. Now, I used to have the hardest time with shaping this because I would take my scissors and literally just try to cut the exact angle that it is. But now, of course, times have changed. They have tips that are already come in almond or stiletto or anything. They have tips that come in all sorts of things, any way that you want them, but it never hurts to know how to already file the shape, because you will have to still file and attain the shape after you lay your acrylic. And look at there, this will be her parter finger. So that's why we call this the Braiders Set, because you have some nails that are going to be sharp. In her instance, it's only going to be her pinkies. Usually we have her ring and her pinkies, but these are going to be the nails that she's going to part with, and the other nails are going to be her regular gripping nails. So now moving on to shaping the squares, I don't leave mine just straight up square. I do taper the sides in just a little bit because it matches. Like, you don't want someone to have like super wide nails. It doesn't really look that good. So when you're filing and shaping, you still want to go over the edge of where you laid the tip onto the nail. Just kind of smooth that out. It doesn't have to be something that's crazy drastic. Some people don't do it at all. It's all personal preference once you learn how to truly prep your nails. Now, remember I told you that prep was literally the longest part. It definitely is, and you have to do it correctly or the set will not last. So if there was any spots that I missed, now's the chance for me to go over and just really get all of the shiny spots off of the nail completely and blend in that nail tip into my nails, so that next we can get ready to put on our dehydrator as well as start laying our acrylic. Now, keep you alcohol on hand. Alcohol is going to be your best friend throughout of all of this. Even alcohol is the best dehydrator for your nails as well. So for my prime, my bonder, I used Mia Secret. I have used plenty of different ones. This is just the one that I liked for the quality and the cost. So Mia Secret brand is really good all the way around, and it's also something to start with, good for beginners. So you don't want to have your primer hitting the skin, okay? You don't want too much of it. You just want a nice amount of it to kind of cover where the, like, you know, the little ashy part was. Now I'm going to use Tammy Taylor. This, honestly, I would not start off with this if you're just starting out for nails. It is on the more expensive side, and you have to leave your ball kind of wet to work with it. I use Young Nail liquid, and there's also another one called Super Nail. Those are both really good nail liquids for me. And then the Tammy Taylor is P3. P3 is such a cute pink, and this is probably the pink that most people use with pink and white as well. Now, you see how I have my powder set up with Tammy Taylor, you want to leave your brush kind of on the more wetter side, if that makes sense. You never want your acrylic bead to be falling off and just running everywhere, like super runny. But some acrylic powders, you're going to need more liquid, some you're going to need less. And Tammy Taylor is one of those acrylic powders that I find that works better with a little bit more. Now on this first initial ball, if you can see, like I didn't pat the back of this ball down all the way like I would have wanted to, but that does not mean the nail is messed up. It's still going to come out perfect, okay? The patting motion and cleaning up your sides are going to be your best friends. Those are going to be the motions that you're going to stick with, because you don't want the acrylic running all off on the sides of your client's finger. So no matter what you do, make sure you keep going back and cleaning up those sides. Now, some people do their acrylic with 1 ball, 2 ball, or 3 ball method. I do all the methods. It just kind of depends on the client's hands that I'm working with and the acrylic powder that I'm working with. So your second bead is always going to be, of course, a little smaller than your first bead. And then your cuticle bead is going to be super small. And make sure that this is not super wet. And you guys, this is literally a flick of the wrist. When you're blending, you want to kind of float it in there, but you don't want it to flood over on the cuticle. And remember, always clean the sides. And you see how nice and laid this acrylic is melting? Now again, Tammy Taylor is a little bit harder to work with, so this would be, I wouldn't say this would be a beginning acrylic powder. I truly wouldn't, because when I was first using it and you kind of have to work quickly, but at the same time you have to know your ratios between liquid to powder. So now you can see on this one how I kind of have the back of that first bead a little more smooth and leveled than I did on the pinky finger, but either way it still turned out. Now when you're doing it this way, take your time. Make sure you're not pressing it up onto the finger or letting it run onto the sides. You guys, your brush, so I have my brush pinched a little bit, so it makes it easier for me to clean up. Some people don't have their brush pinched, but I do, because I like to get like real close to the cuticle without getting on there, and I feel like you can do that a little bit better with a crimped brush. And you can see how I'm holding my client's finger. I'm kind of like pinching her sides. I'm in control of her finger, okay? I know there's some clients that, they want to be moving their fingers, but no, like, this is your work. You're in control. You have to keep real good a hold of those fingers and pull down the side walls when you're trying to clean on the side of those nails. So again, we're doing 3 bead method. That's what they normally call this. And then if you're in nail school and then you're going to test, I don't think they really tell you 1 ball, 2 ball, or 3 ball. I know I didn't. They just made sure that it was on there, that it was shaped, and everything looked how it was supposed to look. Now, once you get in your rhythm, you guys, it's literally so much fun, because you're literally just swiping and patting. Like, with the lightest touch ever, you are patting and swiping so that your acrylic is laying smoothly. Some powder is self-leveling, some isn't. But to me it depends on the liquid to powder ratio, because they can all be worked with and they can all be self-leveling. But we're in 2024 now. I'm pretty sure all the acrylic powders are self-leveling. I truly love this pink. I can't even lie. If there are spaces that you feel like you need to go back and fill in, please do that. Your client is not going to be like, oh my God, you can't do nails. You had to go back and refill. We're not robots. You know what I'm saying? So if you notice that there's a divot or there's a place where you could have put a little more acrylic, please do so. Like you can see up here on the corners where it's still a little bit white and clear. No worries. I just go back, take a little bit of powder, and then I fill in those areas. Okay? Always check your work. If you can see it, your client can see it. I'm telling you. The smoother you lay your acrylic, the less filing you're going to have to do in the end. So just take your time, you guys. Especially if you're just starting. I'm telling you, I laid lumpy acrylic for a very long time. A very long time. But you just have to keep working on it like anything. And then, like I said, your thumb is always going to be a little bit more tricky. You definitely have to use bigger beads, but just pat it all the way across. Like just pat it and smooth it all the way across. Pat it and drag. That pat is going to be your go-to movement, okay? And just never lose control of your client's hands. Like, those are your hands when you're doing them. They're not theirs. They're loaning them to you for the moment being. So this is how it looks with no filing right before I start filing. And the same technique when you're filing, file on each side of the nail. But notice how my file is kind of angled under, is so you still have that nice smooth shape. And then if things are too sharp, you're just going to dull those out at the end with your buffer, not the file, because we don't want to take away from the shape. Now, me personally, once I have filed the sides, then I take my hand file down the middle of the nail and then around the sides. All the way around the nail. I file all the way around the nail. This is when I used to hand file only. This is exactly how I would use to shape and file. And remember what I said for squares. I mean, yes, we don't want like chiclets, you know, we still kind of want a tapered, cute, tight, nice square. So if your client's finger, or, you know, if it's stuck a little bit, you can use your nail, something and press it down, just so you'll be able to get the file right there on the sides and take it in a little bit. And the same thing applies. Once you get your sides how you want. Now, the trick is for on the side of the nail, use like kind of like a downward curve motion when you're filing, because that truly gives the nail like a natural, more refined look. And if you never got cut by one of these files, oh Lord, it is the worst. So again, make sure you are holding the side walls of your client's fingers down when you're filing, and don't go directly into their finger. You guys, those cuts hurt so bad. And I'm not gonna lie, I got cut one too many times from somebody and I stopped going to them. You can always just take two files across each other and kind of dull the sides out, but I don't do that. I just make sure I hold their fingers down, and I make sure that I'm not just filing crazy insane, and making sure that I'm keeping an eye on that. And these are 80/80 grit nail files. I'm not sure if I said that, but these are 80/80 grit. And then I also file from what they call a client view, because I want to see what the client sees. When they turn their hand and look, I want to be able to see the same things. And I also notice this just helps me get my shape like on point. Look at your work from different perspectives. So how you would see it, how your client would see it from the side. Look at your work at all angles so that you know exactly what's going on. And this carbon bit right here, I'm just going to go over and do some fine tuning so I can get really close to the cuticle. The tip of this carbon bit is curved, so it lets me get super close without burning or cutting my client. Now, unlike the beginning of the video when I told you had to keep your drill bit on about a 5 because we were on the natural nail, now we have acrylic laying over the nail, so you can crank that speed up just to a little bit. I go between 9 and 11 when I'm doing my final shaping or final sanding of the nails. Now, filing is like my favorite because you can really see your art or your project or your nails start to come to life. You can see the shape taking, your client's emotions start to change, they're getting excited, you're getting excited, and all this is so very possible as long as you just take your time. You don't want to miss things, so make sure you work your way all the way around the nail and then go up the nail and on the sides. And I'm just carving out a little bit right under the nail because sometimes you can get like a little bit of a hangover, or the acrylic just runs a little bit, so I always use my nail file to go back. Now, someone told me, and I love this advice, if you can't pick up a coin with your nails, then they are too thick. And I don't like thick nails. I like nails to be nice and, cute. Lastly, we are buffing these out. Now, this, again, I believe this is a 80/80 grit buffer. I will have to double check, but I believe this is an 80/80 grit buffer. There's an orange one and a purple one. They both work well to me. The purple one will smooth it out just a little more. And again, if you have any like super sharp corners or anything like that, this is the buffer that I was talking about that you would use, and then try to just knock some of that sharpness off, because if you go back with the file, then we just ruined the shape that we worked so hard to get. Now, buffing is your final step before you have them wash their hands, and then you'll come back in with the top coat and cuticle oil. Now this is my beauty bestie. If you watched my video, my first video I posted, it was me getting my hair done by her. Now it's her turn to get her nails done by me, and we swap services. Now I always know when she has a cute pink base, all she's gonna do is go for the top coat. So, and I'm a sucker for the same thing. Like, once you have a really cute base acrylic color, like, all you need is the top coat. And the top coat is not something that you're going to go on super thick with. It's the same thing. You don't want to rush it just because you feel like, oh, it's clear, whatever. No, you can tell if your top coat is streaky, messy, or anything like that. And as long as your filing and shaping is on point, you can definitely get away with just a top coat. I mean, honestly, make sure you could do your filing and shaping first. That's one thing that I focused on, is I focused on short sets, my filing and shaping, and then I was able to go from there. And then look how cute. Now we just add our cuticle oil, and these nails are ready to get back to work. Don't cheat your client or yourself by not using cuticle oil, you guys. All the hangnails and all that stuff can definitely be avoided if you take the proper aftercare of your nails and of your cuticles. Look at these. Oh my gosh, I wish they were on my hands. Look at this perfect Braiders set. Not too thick, not too thin, just right. Thank y'all so much for watching. If you have any more questions, please let me know down in the comments, and let me know what you thought about this video. Was it helpful? Yay or nay?